Then there's Herman Melville.
Yeah.
This continues a trend that I have personally found quite grating, where a great writer like Herman Melville is more espoused by historians than by real literary critics.
Yeah.
And it's always focused on the biography and very little on what makes Herman Melville, which is the writing, especially Moby-Dick. It's not as if there isn't a point or two, but it's usually pushed by you and then given them to receive and do what they will with it. None are really raised to that point. And if they're experts on Herman Melville, why wouldn't they be more educated about the writing? And I find it kind of grating. There's that horrible poem that he wrote, and Herman Melville, for all his greatness as a prosist, was a horrendous poet. He should have never gone into the medium because he didn't have an ear for it, and he couldn't even come up with basic structure. Some of his poems, they might have an interesting premise as a story, but they don't work as poetry whatsoever. And these are just fans of Herman Melville. They're not speaking about him critically. They're not speaking about his failures. He went into poetry because he thought that he was a failure. He didn't have the confidence in himself, just like Hart Crane didn't, and he went into obscurity and poetry because of the critical reception, when he should have persisted regardless and kept at it with his writing, and perhaps even surpassed something like Moby-Dick.
Yeah, this is one of the things this is one of the earliest examples of where I have academics, three of them, and they all know their stuff about his history and whatnot, but yet they don't understand really what makes the writing great. And it frustrates me. I was telling Jessica the other day that I wish sometimes I would know someone or interview someone about a writer or about a filmmaker that would understand that person in a way I didn't, at least, if not better than me, at least in a different way, that I could then ask questions and it would come off more naturally. You get a sort of stasis here, and these are all good. And so I look at these kinds of interviews where I have two or three people talking about a filmmaker or a poet. The last one I just did was Jeffers, and I look at it in the sense that, okay, this is going to be sort of a cradle to grave bio with me interjecting some things here and there that I can try once or twice to draw someone out. But if they leave it on the table, I don't want to do that more than once or twice, because if I do it 8 or 10 times, they're going to look like a boob. So this is one of those things where I, you know, I can adjust on the fly that I couldn't do, say, in the written interviews. If I had been interviewing, say, Lee Papa for this video interview and he was acting like an asshole, I could have easily just sort of, tightened the screws around his balls and whatnot, and he probably would have bailed on the interview or something like that. But I mean, this is an excellent interview. I don't think there are any things like that. These are better than these lectures that you get when you see Birmingham University presents an evening with Melville, and they have three scholars, and some boob sits there and asks the most obvious questions. I ask better questions, generally speaking, and there are, in each of these interviews, 3 or 4 moments where you're getting something you're not going to get from anyone else but me.
It's sort of a mix of all the best interviews too, because William F. Buckley had politics, Dick Cavett had his entertainment, David Susskind had more sustained, longer interviews, and then what's his name? The other guy, he started wearing dresses later in his life. I can't remember what his name is.
John Carson. I don't know. Oh, Phil Donahue. Phil Donahue.
Yes, that's right.
He didn't wear a dress. He did it on one show.
They're like your interviews are kind of like a mix of them. They're more broad, so you'll have political topics and then based on art. And don't get me wrong, this is a very good interview, and it has 3 or 4 moments of excellent distillation of the story. And it's just grating to constantly see this, and it's a strain thread all of the interviews with these panel shows on artists, to constantly be referring to their life, which has nothing to do with their writing. And it is quite frustrating. It's something that you mentioned NPR does quite often, where they'll be talking about, let's say that he writes a book on pedophilia or something, and the show becomes about pedophilia rather than about the writing of pedophilia. It's one of those things. They have inclination to it. They have no idea about hierarchy. They don't rate things, even though that's the general thing to do in writing, so that you can get to the essence of it.